Hello, everyone. Welcome to Scout Mission. I'm Ross. This is the channel we're going to talk about players in Brazil, players in the Premier League, and all things related to Brazil and English football in regards to the players. We're going to scout some players. We're going to analyze some players. We're going to see how players fit in with teams along the way. But today we're going to focus on the seleção, the selection, and some of the players. And I'm here with my good friend Kyle. Kyle, hello.
Hello. I'm not a scout, but I love football and I work in HR, so I feel like that's enough for us to talk about football. Let's go.
They connect. They connect. If anyone is wondering why they connect, that's because when you're scouting, you need to evaluate the human.
Yeah,
You need to know how a player fits
yeah.
in with the culture of a club, not just their ability with the ball. It's all about the culture of the fit, the mentality that a player has. So Kaya would know all about that because you headhunt these people, right?
Yes, I
The
do. I
fit.
do. That's what I do for a living.
Exactly, and that's what we need in football. Right. So, first topic we're going to talk about is, before we get into the Seleção, is we're going to talk about a very strange type of transfer or loan transfer, let's say, as that's what it is Jamal Lewis, who's just gone to São Paulo. So, know anything about him, Kyle?
Man, not at all. And that's why that's why I want to ask you, what can you tell us about him? Because really, I it's not just me. I think everybody in Brazil is thinking, who is him? Like, who is this guy?
So, he's, if I was to put it in a nutshell, he's a player who had a lot of hopes and potential on him. So he came through Luton Town's academy, and then he switched to Norwich Academy. And from there, after 2 years of being in the academy, they pulled him up to the first team. So he was 18, made his debut in the championship with Norwich. He was part of that Daniel Fark team, the German coach who went there. And their style was very expansive. They liked attack-minded fullbacks. That's probably why he fit, because he is an attacking fullback. Very technical. And when they got promoted to the Premier League, Lewis was one of the players that came away with quite a bit of credit. So Norwich that season, they really suffered. They had a lot of heavy defeats. They were a bit of a, let's say, they were the whipping boys. They did beat Manchester City that season, but they were the whipping boys. And Jamal Lewis was one of the players. Todd Campbell, Pukki. Remember Pukki? The,
Yes,
the striker from Finland. So they were all in the
from
same
Finland.
team.
Yeah.
So Lewis was seen as a highly rated left back, a player that a lot of clubs were observing. And then it was Newcastle who took him. He started a lot of the games when he first went to Newcastle, but after I think about 2/3 of the season, he lost his position. And the reason why I think he lost his position was because Steve Bruce, the coach at the time, was under a lot of pressure. Newcastle were really struggling. Their fans were not happy at all. Their takeover talk was in the background, simmering a little bit. In fact, I think the takeover was happening at that time. And then Steve Bruce started to leave him out of the team. So he was only 21 at the time, I think. I think the reason was he lacked the experience and the resolve of a team who are in disarray. Like, they were a mess, Newcastle, let's face it. So he really struggled, and then he wasn't seen in the team again. And then Eddie Howe, who was the coach now of Newcastle, came in, and you were thinking this is a guy who loves young British players because Lewis is from Northern Ireland, or at least he represents Northern Ireland. Maybe he is from England, but he just never got any real game time. He doesn't seem to be trusted by Howe. He had a problem at the stage. It wasn't until last season, so we're fast forwarding 3 years now, 2, 3 years now. It wasn't until last season when Newcastle decided that he's going to go out on loan because he really wasn't getting any game time. He went to Watford for the year and he played the majority of the games, but this is the championship, so he had to go down a level to kind of like restore his reputation and make other teams remember he exists. as a player, he's one of those players who's very technical, very good, very easy on the eye. So when he receives the ball, when you're watching him play, you're thinking, okay, he's competent. He can hold his own, but he's quite timid. So he's an attacking fullback. You'd expect him to be really aggressive, really attack the opposition, but he second guesses things. He has a doubt. He comes back a lot. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why I think it's more of a mental hurdle for him. He's just not really got over that phase that some players have when they're younger and they need to just push past it and develop, get that aggression. And he lacks it. Now he's generally a left back, but he can move into left midfield. But he also lacks that consistency and quality from crosses, doing the right thing with the ball, making the right decision on the ball as well. So who knows? This could be a move that really makes him, because I think dropping this kid in, I say kid, he's 25, 26. I say dropping this player into a culture and an environment and a stadium that he won't have ever experienced in his life, something completely new, is either going to make him or it's going to break him and maybe like put his career on a down.
That's a great question, mate. Because I was thinking, São Paulo is one of the clubs that has like a high attendance on Morumbis, and I think from what you described of him, I think São Paulo has good hopes. You know, like I wouldn't say high hopes, but good hopes. I hope the quality. I hope like a Premier League or Championship kind of player could come and like take over somehow. I know that Brazil is known for having good football, good players, but we've seen it before. Some players, some older players that come to the league, come to Brasileirão, they perform really well, or even the younger ones who didn't like stood out in Europe. When they come here, they just explode. So yeah, I think it's a good scenario for him.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of environment he had around him in Newcastle. Like Newcastle is known for being a party city. So we had a lot of players playing Newcastle in the past, from outside of England, by the way, who just struggle with that culture because the nightlife is really tempting. So I think in Sao Paulo, he's probably, I mean, I don't think
It's
he's
the
going to have.
best place to be.
Yeah, I think so. In his condominium, training condominium. I think maybe that's. I'm not for 1 second suggesting that he is like that. Maybe he isn't.
Uh-huh.
Maybe he's a good kid. He
Uh-huh.
doesn't get involved with stuff like that. I think it's more about his mentality on the pitch with his timidness, passion. I think I will play a little bit more aggressively than they did with the Argentinian coach. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how he settles there, how he develops.
I'll
Um,
confess that I have to confess that I'll watch a São Paulo game when he plays because I want to see him play for sure.
yeah, something you wouldn't normally do, right?
Yeah, because I support Palmeiras and I actually don't like when São Paulo plays. I don't know why. Like they lack that kind of Brazilian soul. They're a different club, apart from the others. So yeah. But for him, I'll watch it.
Okay, I'm sure Jamal will appreciate the support. But yeah, let's see how he does. We'll check in on him later and talk about it. And
Yeah.
so one thing I wanted to ask you, mate, is Brazil it isn't really renowned. In fact, I don't think it's renowned at all, especially in Europe, for having this big open door where all the players flock to. For example, Premier League, everybody goes there. Europe,
Yeah.
everybody goes there to most of the leagues in Europe as well. But Brazil's not really like that, is it? It's majority of the players are Brazilian. You get like other South Americans, and
Yeah.
then I'm thinking back in the days when Seedorf came to Brazil for a small time with Botafogo. Other than that, you don't really get it. But we're seeing a trend. Maybe are we seeing a trend? Is something changing?
Definitely, definitely. We had some Argentinian players here. We had some Uruguayan players here, but uh, maybe since 2019, we start having Portuguese coaches. We have younger coaches coming up playing Serie A, and I think that that type of new mentality, apart from the old guard that we had before, things change. So we had big clubs, already big clubs, becoming bigger, having a bigger revenue year after year. For example, Palmeiras and Flamengo, and Flamengo started like hiring those older players that were like fading out in Europe, and they brought them here. They performed really well, like Rafinha, for example, from Bayern
Hmm.
Munich and Schalke. And they this is a good idea. So let's look for more players that fit that profile. So after it worked out, a lot of new players, a lot of new clubs actually start watching those players and trying to bring them here. But there's another thing. We have more clubs now that are being sold to investors. So a lot more money is also coming from maybe 2 or 3 years, for the past 2 or 3 years, and that kind of money, the change in culture, the change from the coaches, Portuguese coaches coming to Brazil, Argentinian coaches coming to Brazil that had an European background, have the connection, knows the agent. So I think that's a recipe for success. If there is a success, I think it is, because when we see a British player coming to play in Brazil, it's I never seen it before. I can't remember. I was trying to, but I can't remember. I don't know if that happened. Maybe it's the
There's
first.
one. There's
There was
one,
one.
but he's not fully British. I think he's half Turkey. He played for Turkey, but he is.
Okay.
I think he was born and raised in England. Colin Kazim Richards. Do you
Oh
remember
yeah.
him?
No, never heard of
No,
him. Sorry,
I don't know.
sorry,
I don't think
cousin.
he went. He was with Corinthians, I think, for maybe like a year or something. But he's traveled everywhere. So
Yeah,
uh,
and we had not only the big clubs hiring, like signing for European players, or even players that had European experience. Like for example, Curitiba was fighting uh for the, we call it here, C4. The clubs that fight to not be relegated. They hired the Algerian player, Salimeni,
Slimani,
Salimani.
Slimani. Yeah.
So now we have Bolaisia on Criciúma. We have a lot of players in Flamengo, some more in Palmeiras, and yeah, Vasco. So the things are changing, and I see that more in a positive way than in a negative way. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited by this.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, mate. It's really interesting to see, and I hope that because Felipe Anderson has just come from Lazio to Palmeiras, right, or maybe like a couple of months ago, but that was an interesting one as well. Coutinho's returned, Payet, but if you notice, like a lot of these players that are coming from Europe, they tend to be more like exciting. So attacking midfielders, strikers, wingers. So I think maybe the strategy is, can we get a high quality attacking player who maybe wants a bit of money, but is going to really help us in this league? Because I sometimes, well, we know it's true, right? All Brazilian teams, if you have like a good quality young player, attacking player, he's going to get poached from Europe, right? So you're relying on the older players or the mid players to kind of like prop up the talent in terms of like attacking threat, which there's occasions where it just doesn't really work. Like they're not really that special enough, right? So maybe they decided, let's sign the players that European teams are not really keen on as much, like Payet. Um, Maybe they've got some flaws, but maybe they can bring something special to the league and make it more interesting for the fans. And
Yeah,
yeah,
for example, we had Luis Suarez last
yeah,
year. here, playing here. So for Grêmio, that was amazing. Probably the best signing we ever had. You know, like uh, talking about the size of the stature of the player. Luis Suarez probably one of the best strikers this century. So yeah, there's another thing. There's another side for this story, which is now I feel like Brazilian clubs can also hold more onto players more than before because we're not going we don't know the backstage of the negotiation, but we just heard a player that didn't want to go to West Ham and decided to stay in Flamengo. I the consequences are bad for him, but he decided to stay. So um, there's also that side that we can keep more players. You know, like they think they wait the pros and cons, and they it's a good decision to stay also. So yeah, before maybe if a club from Ukraine came and they would go for like didn't even think about it. Now
Yeah,
they have something to think.
that's true. By the way, I saw a Ukrainian goalkeeper for Atletico Paranaense under 20s.
That is amazing. I didn't know that. That is
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. I was doing some stuff on Y Scout and I saw this goalkeeper. I
Yeah,
thought
we
that's a strange name for Brazilian. And then I saw the Ukrainian flag. Ah, okay. They must have taken him when the war started. They must have invited some players from Shakhtar, I guess.
yeah. Now we also have in Fortaleza, which now is like in second place in Brasileirão. It's the city I live in. Uh, they have a player that came from the academy that is from Venezuela. So he was
Eh,
formed here, he raised here. So that's something we didn't see before, similar to the Ukrainian guy. So yeah, things are changing. Things are changing for Brazil.
If you'd like to stay up to date with our content and our videos, please hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell so you can stay up to date with all the content we release. Also, please add your comments about which players you'd like us to cover. Remember, this is the channel that's going to cover all scouting analysis and scout reports, especially on players that you want to hear about. So please let us know.